Hey, I'm Elizabeth from Living Vibrantly, and if you know me at all already, you may know that I have a fitness and nutrition coaching business. But this video is about our struggle with infertility, and I apologize if this is a little long. I guess this is a vlog. I'm doing this for people who are curious about fertility treatment and what it's like, but the story is so different for everybody that this is also a little bit for me, just to kind of remember what all we've gone through. We are about to start fertility treatment, and as I'll explain to you, we've been, trying a lot of different things, but we're really going. I mean, we're doing IVF, so that's like pulling out the big guns. And we're ready to start with that. And pretty much we've just got everything all set. We've got all the drugs, which is a story in itself, which I'll tell you. And our doctor is standing by just waiting to hear from us. It all depends on my cycle. So that's really, I mean, on top of not being able to plan in terms of family planning, the way most people think of it, of like you get to decide when you have children. And I know nobody ever really gets to decide. I do believe that it's up to God, but at the same time, most people have a reasonable expectation that there's certain things you do to avoid pregnancy and certain things you do when you want to become pregnant. Well, when that doesn't work for you, it introduces a lot of uncertainty, obviously, and I mean, it just started, gosh, okay, gotta keep my train of thought here. But there's been that uncertainty now in our lives since we met almost 5 years ago, and since we got married almost 4 years ago. It's always been that uncertainty of we know we want children, so we have no idea what our life is going to look like in a year or 2 years. I mean, things like planning travel, deciding what work to do on our house, kind of everything has been on hold because, if you're having a baby, there's certain things you would want to get done right away, or there's certain things that you would want to put off. And just all of that has been a big question mark. So now, adding to that just general air of uncertainty is the immediate uncertainty of not knowing which day. My husband has to give me 3 shots a day. I could do it myself, but that's like, if I'm going through this, he's got to be part of it. So, I mean, I'm kind of a scaredy cat, but I just want him to do it. So I said he has to, and he did not object. So, but we don't know when that's starting. And it could be in 2 days. It could be in 7 days. I've got the drugs. I'm just going to wait and see. And then apart from that, the doctor visits that are required are pretty frequent. And I'll tell you just quickly right now, the reason for that is, so the drugs that I am going on are going to make me grow lots of eggs. Hopefully, that's what you want to happen. Lots of eggs, and they grow to a good size. So, the drugs are basically massive doses so that you produce, it's just so that more than one egg matures in the same month, so that they don't have to do this like month after month after month with just one egg. You try and get a bunch at once. So that's the reason for the drugs, but they also have to monitor that really carefully. Every woman's body responds differently. Some women have a bunch of eggs grow fast, some women it takes longer. So, and the doses are adjusted depending on what they're seeing on the ultrasound. So it's all very individual, and they need to monitor and make adjustments. It's not like, here's the dose and, see you in 2 weeks. It sounds like I'll be coming to the doctor's office like every 2 or 3 days for an ultrasound and blood work. It's kind of nice to know that I'll be so closely monitored, but it's going to be, going to the doctor before work, getting up early. It's going to be a stressful time. So I'm going to low impact, gentle exercise, trying to practice self-care, eat healthy, sleep a lot, drink a lot of water, and just do whatever I can to minimize stress. So that's what is coming up for us. Now, in terms of what has led us up to this, that is a long story. And I could tell you, I'll try and tell you the short version because we don't want this to be like a 30-minute podcast episode. So Sean and I, my husband and I met, like I said, it's going on 5 years ago. And we were both, I guess I was 32, 31. I was 32 when we got married, and he's 5 years older. So we kind of were ready and knew that, I mean, it wasn't like urgent to try and have kids right away, but we knew that we shouldn't wait too long. So we did start trying right away, and they, fertility specialists won't help you until you've been trying a year without any success. But even from there, it's kind of a long series of tests, and oh my goodness, I mean, there's a lot that you can do. There's a lot that we didn't even do because essentially our doctor told us at our age, by that time I was 34, she said, you can spend a lot of time on testing, but she basically felt that IVF had a much better chance of succeeding. And at that time, we also were going to do what's called letrozole. And so it's essentially kind of a scaled back version of what we're doing now. So drug to help your eggs grow and help things implant, so this is the next thing short of IVF. But we didn't get a chance to try that, and I'll tell you the reason for that. The other thing that was suggested that we were going to try was IUI, intrauterine insemination. So it's basically, it's like the lowest tech version of fertility treatment. I'll let you Google that because I don't feel like explaining it. IUI, give it a Google search if you're wondering what that is. But pretty low tech stuff. And then from there, it's really on to IVF. And there's a lot that we could have looked at with, hormone balancing and acupuncture, but, we had some decisions to make, and there were things we were going to try. And then I ended up getting some test results that put us straight into the IVF camp. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So backing up, in June of 2014, we had done a very invasive test to make sure that your tubes are open. This was it's over very quickly, but it's extremely uncomfortable and somewhat painful. They grab your uterus with a clamp so they can insert. It was like a balloon with dye, and they just have to make sure that they have to do a visual inspection of your tubes with the ultrasound. So like I said, it's over real fast, but extremely uncomfortable to, have that sensitive area clamped like that. So, you got to be pretty desperate already to be going through something like that. And, that showed everything was normal. And so everything was normal on Sean's side too, with the lab analysis of him. And, gosh, this is such awkward stuff to talk about. But I mean, that's why people don't talk about it. And I think that people should talk about it more. So I'm trying. Anyway, as far as my hormones, it came back that essentially I was closer to menopause than my real age would suggest. So in terms of hormone levels, I was a little bit more further along in terms of where my egg quality was and everything. So that's another reason why the doctor felt we didn't have all the time in the world. We better do something. So then I ended up having surgery because my mom had a condition called endometriosis. And this is where tissue similar to the inside of the uterus grows outside the uterus, grows elsewhere in the pelvic cavity. And there's a huge amount of variation in terms of how severe it can be and how painful it can be. So if it's growing everywhere, which was my situation, some people still don't have a lot of pain. I was in a lot of pain, but, not as much as some other people that I know. I can tell you that for sure. And then some people have a ton of pain, and very limited growth. When doctors go in and look, there's not a lot there. So it's not really that well understood, why it grows in the first place and how it actually causes pain for women. And if you have endometriosis or if you have pelvic pain, please, please, please reach out to me. Send me a message, because there's a lot more that I've learned about it than what I'm putting into this video. And if you are thinking about having this surgery, or if you're dealing with pain right now and you are looking at options for treating that, I just would love to talk with you more about things that, not that I wish I'd done differently, but things that I know now that I wish I had known before. So anyway, I had this really painful condition that was possibly making it difficult for us to become pregnant, because what happens is this tissue, and they believe that scientists, doctors believe now that it's laid down from before birth. Essentially the cells grow in the wrong place. So there used to be all of this kind of folk wisdom that you get endometriosis because the blood from your period flows back out of your fallopian tubes. And I think they've pretty much disproven that that's physically impossible, which is good, because I feel like it was a little bit of blaming the woman that, it's your fault. If you didn't lie on your side or whatever, that you wouldn't have this. So that is not true. They've shown that those cells are there at a young age, and then, develop during puberty and things like that. But the reason it can cause problems for fertility is that every month during your period, it's hormonal fluctuations that control the shedding of the uterine lining. Well, when those cells are shedding and they're not in the uterus, there is nowhere for the shedding to go. So you're essentially bleeding internally, and it just turns into scar tissue. So that, and then the only way that it can be diagnosed is surgery. There's no X-ray, ultrasound that will show it. The doctor has to go in and visually inspect. So it's a laparoscopic procedure, but it can be fairly invasive, as you'll hear in my story. And when you go in for surgery, you don't know if they're going to be just taking a look around. They see you don't have it. They go in and they get in, they get out. Or at the opposite end of the spectrum, my case, I had a surgery that lasted between 4 and 5 hours. It was one of the most severe cases that they had ever seen. So I had scar tissue all over the place, and they have to get all of those cells out, or, endometriosis can grow back. So that was a surgery that I had, and I'm glad that I had it. There are different types of surgery available. I had the most effective kind. If you're looking at the surgery, please, please, please contact me, because I'm plugged into the research about this a lot more than I was before this all happened to me. So what ended up happening was, right at the end of the surgery, I had abnormal bleeding, and they still don't know what caused it. It could have been an allergy. There's a blue dye that they apply right at the end of the surgery to make sure that your tubes are still open. So, they are kind of working on the assumption I was allergic to that and can never be exposed to it again. But even a little scarier is, what if it's not that? Maybe it was something else. So since I had this surgery, I learned a lot of dietary things too that can cause bleeding during surgery that unfortunately are not part of the standard instructions that they give you when you're preparing for surgery. So if you're seeing this, if you're having this procedure, please reach out to me, because there's a lot of information that I can share with you. And that I definitely, for sure, wish I had done differently. Oh my goodness, I would have saved myself, permanent injury to my kidneys. So what happened was, I started bleeding, and your kidneys are very sensitive. So because, I was getting blood transfusions and everything, but they had to cut, they went from small laparoscopic incisions to a large, 8-inch incision or something like that. And it goes in kind of an L shape. So they really had my abdomen wide open to try and find the bleeding source and get it under control. And it was really scary. I could easily have died. I wasn't awake during that time, but thinking back on it, it's scary. And what happened was my kidneys apparently lost their blood supply just briefly, but it was enough for them to be really seriously damaged. So I was on dialysis treatment for 3 months. I was in the hospital inpatient for 3 weeks. And it's going on 2 years later now. And I think I still have some problems with my abdominal muscles and still feel like I'm really fully recovering. My kidneys only regained about 40% of their function. So it's fine for normal daily life. However, what happens when you're pregnant is your blood volume doubles. So it would be that much extra work for my kidneys to do. And my doctors didn't feel that it was safe for me to proceed with pregnancy. So this is all to tell you that this is why we're going through IVF, that I, at this point, cannot carry this pregnancy. So because of my age, now I just turned 37, our doctors feel that it's our best option to go through, IVF, which allows us to freeze embryos without me actually being pregnant right now. And then we'll see what happens with my kidneys and if I'm able to carry the baby later. And there's other things we can look at. We can look at using a surrogate. Obviously, if we don't do that, we have some difficult choices to make with regard to those frozen embryos. But and then there's always adoption too. So those are all things that we are thinking about. But right now, we really just feel that this is the right choice for us. So that is what we are embarking on. And thank you for listening. Like I said, what I've learned is there's not really one course at all of fertility treatment. Everyone's problems and issues are unique. The course that everyone chooses is completely unique. So I don't know how helpful my story will necessarily be, other than, people who specifically have endometriosis, who may have kidney problems, kidney disease. But I do want people to know that, this is an example. Fertility treatment can be a very long and complicated road, and there's been heartache after heartache. To have met the person that you're just so excited to be marrying, who is going to be an amazing dad, and then all of a sudden, it turns out it's not going to be easy for you to make that dream come true of having a family. And then, the surgery with all the recovery that was involved with that, when I was told it was a pretty minor procedure and it was life changing. I mean, I was really, really sick and having to come back from that. And very rocky road there. And then, even after that, because we were told that it was fine for me to get pregnant. And then when we saw a specialist, she basically said, this is not a good idea. Here's the research. It's very clear what the research showed. And she said, you can go ahead with it, but there's a good chance you'll end up back on dialysis, which is an extremely time-consuming and hard on the body kind of treatment. So really not something you want to be doing as a new parent. Even if you are fortunate enough to give birth to a healthy baby, that would really be pretty difficult. So we decided not to do that. So, the individual obstacles are different, but everyone's, I think, infertility journey is kind of equally rocky. There's so much hope involved and so much disappointment by the time you get to the point of IVF. Certainly, it's not the first step. There's a lot else that has been tried, usually along the way. So thank you once again for listening. And if any part of this, if you have questions, anything that I can help with, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We have learned a lot through the course of this, and I would love to be able to share that if someone else feels that it could help them. Thanks, and I'll be back at some point with an update, and hopefully a very happy update. But if you can keep us in your thoughts and prayers, we would really, really appreciate it. It's scary, but it is also exciting. So here's hoping.